Now, dear listener, you know I've talked to you a lot on the Politicrat Daily podcast about making your own podcast. And let me tell you something, Anchor gives you the best opportunity to do that. It's free of charge. Yes, it's free. And there are lots of creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your own phone or computer. How about that? And you can even add songs to your podcast from Spotify. It's really wonderful. You can do this, and it really is very easy. And Anchor will even distribute your podcast for you. It can be heard on all kinds of platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can make some money too. And money making is a good thing. It's everything you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore. It is Wednesday, May the 26th, 2021. On this edition of the Politicrat, recollections, reflections, history, and supermoons. All of that and more explained coming up next. And hello and welcome to the Politicrat. It's great to have you here. Thank you very much for listening, dear listener. And of course, as always, I am very much appreciative of you and your precious time spent listening to me here on this Wednesday, May the 26th, 2021. I hope you're well. I hope that your day is going as well as it can and that you are safe and that you and yours are well and healthy. And your day is moving by exactly the way you want it to, or near enough, as we get to the midweek, the hump day edition of the Politicrat Daily podcast. And again, I must say to you, please check yourself and get tested, get checked for your health, general checkups, everything. It's just really important. Always, no matter how old or young you are, no matter how healthy you think you are, no matter how healthy you know you are, just do this, please. It's great preventative medicine. It really is the best kind of preventative medicine. So please do this, and please be a vaccinated person. I would love nothing more than everyone to do that. Please, it's so important. Get vaccinated. And get fully vaccinated. That's a really important thing too.
Half of all adults in America are now fully vaccinated. White House officials making that announcement today, calling it a major achievement. When President Biden took office in January, 1% of Americans were vaccinated. Now, more than 130 million people in the U.S. are fully vaccinated. President Biden has a goal of 160 million adults fully vaxxed by July 4th. Here in the Bay Area, not surprisingly, we have higher vaccination rates compared to the rest of the country. Most of our counties, take a look, have fully vaccinated at least 62% of people 16 and over. Marin County, look at that, the highest in our region with 73%. San Francisco County at 66%. You notice the Solano County is the lowest with 48%.
That was from NBC News Bay Area. Yesterday, a portion of their broadcast, the local news here in San Francisco, and you heard it. I mean, that's the vaccination rate, the rate of fully vaccinated individuals in the Northern California Bay Area. Those counties, now obviously you couldn't see the map, but you heard what that person was saying, and I believe it was Raj Mathai, who used to be a sports person on NBC Bay Area. But that's neither here nor there. He's now a full-time newscaster, and he was reading out the numbers that you heard there. San Francisco County, 66% of the people in San Francisco County are fully vaccinated. I think that's a really good thing, and that's way ahead of the national average. So I think that's really good. As you heard, the national average or the national mark in the United States is 50%. So half of all adults in the United States overall are fully vaccinated. That's a tremendous achievement. And President Biden and Vice President Harris and a number of other officials have to be given a lot of credit for doing this. Of course, people in the various states, the governors, and the other individuals who have helped to make this work. So that is a huge success. Still a long way to go. But the fact that half of the adults in the United States have been fully vaccinated is an absolute triumph. And there's a long way to go, but that is a significant mark. Just a few short months ago, we were nowhere near that figure. Nowhere near. And over the last 4 months, we've got to 50% of adults in the United States fully vaccinated. That's really a great accomplishment. So congratulations and thank you to everyone who has got their full vaccination. And I hope that if you haven't yet, that you do. Please do this. It's so important. And as I was just saying before that, the numbers here in the San Francisco Bay Area, the Northern California Bay Area, I mean, it's just fascinating. 66% of people here in the San Francisco are fully vaccinated in the county. That's just tremendous. That's a really good thing. And 73% in the adjacent county called Marin County here in Northern California. And Marin County is one of the most affluent counties in the country. But that's neither here nor there. But it is to say that 73%, and I guess that there may be a connection between those, but 73%, that's staggering. 73% of the people. Now, I believe there's 73% of adults in Marin County are fully vaccinated. That's tremendous. And we need to get into the 70s and above. We need to get to 75 or so to 80% to start to drive this virus down. So again, I think that's some good news. Good news for the United States. And I know that the UK is beginning to see some really favorable rates. Now, the real issue, though, is the rest of the world. And there are a number of other countries who are as well getting some very higher percentages. But we need to really focus now on India, Brazil, a number of countries in the African continent. We need to just look at everybody and make sure that there is the kind of vaccination rates that the US and the UK enjoy. You know, the two of the richest countries, you know, with all the stockpile of vaccine. We need to make sure that we need to make sure that all of the African continent starts to get this. And the COVAX program, which really has been, I think, poorly funded and needs to get a lot more backing and support, is doing good and doing fairly well, but not nearly enough of the people that program and that consortium of scientists and people are seeking to vaccinate have been vaccinated yet. So lots more to do there. But I just wanted to give that update to you as this particular podcast episode unfolds. I also wanted to let you know that there are now 12 to 15-year-olds all across the United States who are being vaccinated, and in other countries too. And there are incentives being given out to those youngsters. Money even. I mean, it's happening not just to youngsters, but other people as well who are older than 15 who are being given incentives to get vaccinated. And I think that's a good thing, you know. I do think it's a good thing. We need to have a healthy populace, certainly in all respects, and certainly with this vaccination program. We need to vaccinate as many people as possible. Of course, there's still people who are nervous and uncomfortable because of the history of government violence and experimentation upon their bodies and upon black and brown bodies. And look, we're seeing this, of course, along the border, as I told you last week, and there's understandable concern about all of those kinds of things and justifiable concern. I just want to add that it is important to educate people who are expressing doubts about the vaccinations and about the vaccines. Please do this. If you know people who are, I'm not talking about these anti-vaxxers. You just have to leave people like that to themselves. I'm talking about people who are saying, well, I don't know, I'm a little nervous, or someone on Facebook told me this, or someone on Facebook told me that. Those kinds of individuals, I think, are people you can try to talk to. If you find very early on in your conversation that they are not going to listen or they're dead set against it, you just have to move on and leave them to their own devices. As Dr. Fauci said, though, recently, the more people that are vaccinated, the better. And if you're one of the people not vaccinated, the virus will find a host. And that's what he said very recently, whether it was yesterday or the day before. So please get vaccinated. Because believe me, once you've got these higher vaccination rates, this virus will have very, very few places left to go. And if you are one of those who is not vaccinated, the virus is going to find you because the virus is looking for a host. And you will be their happy host. But you yourself would be very unhappily sick.
We're just thankful for what's going on, and we just want this George Floyd Policing Act to be passed in the future.
Is there any message? Could I ask you real quick?
No.
Is there a message you want the American people to know?
Because this is the thing. If you can make federal laws to protect the bird, which is the bald eagle, you can make federal laws to protect people of color.
What about that?
And that was Felonious Floyd, the brother of George Floyd. That was him speaking in front of the White House with his family and the other family members of George Floyd as well, along with Attorney Benjamin Crump, along with numerous other attorneys for the family of George Floyd, after their meeting with President Joe Biden yesterday. And I thought that what you just heard there from Felonious Floyd was 100%. I mean, yeah. This George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which was written, authored by Representative Congresswoman Karen Bass of California, is something that must be passed and must be passed right now, must be passed yesterday. And this is such an important piece of legislation. And I alluded to this yesterday in the 1 year mark episode that I did on George Floyd and on his legacy and what we need to do. And one of the things I said yesterday was we've got to call these Republican senators at 202-224-3121 or 202-225-3121. And we have to impress upon them the importance of the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. This is a bill that ends qualified immunity for police. This is a bill that ends chokeholds. This is a bill that ends no-knock warrants. And numerous other things. We must have this bill passed in the Senate. And you have to tell these Republican senators that this is the best pro-life bill that they are going to be seeing in their political careers. And if these Republican senators are pro-lifers, if they believe in the sanctity of life, then they must vote yes on the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. Because that act will literally save many thousands of lives. It will literally save many thousands of lives, black and brown lives. And that's what the message has to be. If we want a society that thinks that it is the land of the free and the home of the brave, and if we want a safer society, we've got to have this George Floyd Justice in Policing Act passed. And we need to make those phone calls pronto, right now. 202-224-3121, 202-225-3121. Either phone number to the DC Congressional Switchboard will get you to an operator who will ask you, who would you like to speak to? And you tell them whichever Republican senator, just mention the name of the Republican senator. It's easy to find out their names. You can look them up at senate.gov. It's very easy to find their names. And believe me, once you find their names, you can only be put through to one Republican senator at a time. You can't get to, say, 5 names and be put through to 5 different people. Obviously, you can't do that. At least I know you can't do that because I've tried to do more than one and ask for more than one person, rather, and you get told no, you can only do one. So you have to keep calling back. But we have to do this. 50 senators, 50 Republican senators need to be called. And it's the very least we can do. This will be, if this bill gets passed in the Senate, President Biden, who yesterday, as I said earlier, met with George Floyd's family members, said that he would sign it without delay. He'd sign it immediately. So his pen is at the ready. The situation now is what is going on in the Senate. And from what I've learned, there are negotiations going on still. President Biden himself has spoken to the negotiators. George Floyd's brother that you heard a few minutes ago, Philonise, said that he had a conversation with Senator Lindsey Graham, the Republican out of South Carolina, Senator Tim Scott, the Republican out of South Carolina, and Senator Cory Booker, the Democrat out of New Jersey. And they all said that they were very hopeful, and more hopeful than ever before, of getting this bill passed in the Senate, this George Floyd Justice in Policing Act. And that at least is a good sign. You may remember that last summer, almost a year ago now, or whenever it was last year, Tim Scott, Senator Scott, that I just mentioned there out of South Carolina, put up a bill of his own that was absolutely ridiculous, and it got voted down. It was a petty bill that was very weak, did not put any kind of oversight on police at all, didn't challenge them at all. It was very, well, they may keep a list of violations if they want to, kind of thing. You know, they may keep a database. It was very, very lax. The United States House of Representatives passed the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act a year ago. A year ago. At least a year ago. And the United States Senate has been dithering and not at all getting involved in this. And now it must. And while we're at it, also tell those Republican senators that you call at 202-225-3121 or 202-224-3121 to pass the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. That must also be a central focus of your phone call. Literally. you need to also demand that these Republicans in the United States Senate pass the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. A couple of years ago now, when he was Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell in the Senate said, oh yes, I didn't even know that we hadn't done that. I thought we would have done that by now. We would have passed an anti-lynching bill. We haven't? Oh, I didn't know. And I think he said this actually in an interview, not on the floor of the Senate. But the point is that he said this a couple of years ago. And I think now he better wake up and vote for the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. What happened since, Senator McConnell? What happened? You have to do this, and you're no longer the majority leader. You count on being the majority leader sometime in 2023. But this is where an active and informed citizenry comes in, and that is you, dear listener. You have to get on the horn and call these Republican senators. This is where the sauce gets made, and you're the one who gets to make it. And the way you do that is by calling these Republican senators. Don't be shy. Don't be bashful. Don't be afraid. State your case. Make it clear. Don't be rude. Just get to the point and tell whomever it is who you are put through to after the operator answers, whether it's an answering machine or an actual live staff person, that it is so important that the Republican senator that you are speaking to or whose office you are calling passes and votes for both the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act and the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. I mean, these two things go hand in hand. These two bills go hand in hand. And please, when you speak to these Republican senators or their staff members, who's the most likely person that you're going to get, their aides, or whomever in their staff, tell them that it will be these two pieces of legislation will be the best pieces of pro-life legislation these senators ever pass. Believe me, these two pieces of legislation will be the best pro-life measures. Short, of course, of the other one, of course, is a bill on gun violence and preventing gun violence. That'll be another one. But these will be two of, let me just put it that way, because the gun violence, that is huge. That needs to be passed as well. But we need to deal with these two things. The moment is here. It's always been here. This is where we have an opportunity to push the people that we vote in. Now, I didn't vote for any of these Republican senators. Maybe you're in a city or state, maybe you're in a state where you did vote for the Republican senators. I don't know. But if you did or if you didn't, the fact is that now you've got these two issues on the table, and both of these bills have been passed in the House. And they were passed in 2020. I'm serious, nearly a year ago. In fact, in the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act case, it was back in February of 2020, 2 days after Ahmaud Arbery was lynched. And the general public didn't really know about what happened to Ahmaud Arbery until at least a month or two later. In April of 2020 is when most of us around the United States and beyond, found out about the fact that Ahmaud Arbery had been lynched while he jogged down in Georgia. And then the video came out around that time. That's when we all learned of it. But unbeknownst, no doubt, to a majority of the people in the House of Representatives at the time, they passed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. And many of those House members, I dare say, had no idea of what happened to Ahmaud Arbery just 2 days before. just 2 days before they passed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. So this is a really important moment. You've got elections coming up, the midterms in next year, 2022. You can't take anything for granted. We cannot become complacent. We've got to keep pushing and keep demanding that things get done the way we want them to. We vote these people in on the Democratic side, and we must keep pushing them. It's that simple. There should not be any foot dragging, for lack of a better terminology, on any of these bills that I've just mentioned. So that's something I really wanted to talk about here after yesterday's episode. And we need to make sure that families don't go through what George Floyd's family or Breonna Taylor's family or Rayshard Brooks's family or Dante Wright's family or Adam Toledo's family or Andrew Brown Jr.'s family or Sandra Bland's family or Eric Garner's family go through. Again, we don't want anyone to go through that. We don't. We've had it with all of these killer cops murdering our brothers and sisters, our persons, our people. We've had enough of this. I've had enough of this. I should just speak for myself. I've had enough of it. And we've got to keep this on the table, and we've got to keep pressing. And we have to do it on a local level too, even more so, because we need to know, and you need to know, in the city you live in, the town you live in, the municipality that you live in, who is on the board of supervisors or the city council. You need to find out who those persons are, and you need to find out who they're voting for and what measures they're voting for, I should say, and what they're not voting on. These things can be readily found out online. And you need to demand that they support these kinds of measures on a local and municipal level so that there is protection for people who are targeted by lynchings. So there is protection for people who the police are targeting, black and brown people. We have to do this on the local level, the state level, of course, as well, but the local level as well. Those are both very important. So, the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act is definitely where we want to go. It's not 100% of everything, but there's a lot of things in that act that are very important and certainly do need to be passed. And I agree with Thelonious Floyd, who did say, not in that clip you heard, but did say that we cannot afford to rush this bill. And while that is true, he's also added to the statement that it is important to get this bill passed. These police cannot continue to murder us. And we are not going to allow that to happen. We have to make our voices heard. In just over a month, some of you listening to me are going to be waving an American flag if you're not already doing that. And some of you, or some of the people you know, are going to be waving that flag. And they are going to be having barbecues and all kinds of other cookouts, all under the banner of a flag, the Stars and Stripes. And the real deal about that is that I dare say that more than a few of those people have no idea of what the history of the United States really is. Or if they do, it will take a back seat to hot dogs and burgers. Dear listener, you have to go right now. Please, I want you to go to the Politicrat Daily Podcast online store because there's so much there waiting for you. So much. T-shirts, hats. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And then you've got hoodies and pens and mugs. Oh my goodness me, it just never ends. I mean, you can get lost in there. You really can. So much more. Drinkware. Socks. That's right, socks. I mean, if you want to get fitted and kitted, this is the place to be. The Politicrat Daily Podcast online store. Shop there right now at the-politicrat.myshopify.com. That's the-politicrat.myshopify.com. Thank you for your support.
The entire crime scene is going to be sealed off so that the investigators will have as clean of a scene as they can possibly get. Obviously, there's going to be a lot to sift through with hate to even say it, potentially multiple bodies lying around that facility. So it's going to be sealed off, and it's going to be a very meticulous, very slow process to try and get to the bottom of exactly what happened. We don't have any information on the shooter, only that the shooter possibly committed suicide, but the shooter is also one of the fatals in this event this morning. So it's going to be some time before we have the answers, and it's going to be a long, tedious investigation.
That is CBSN reporter Len Ramirez talking about a mass shooting that occurred this morning in San Jose, California, which is roughly, it's about 60 miles or so south of San Francisco. It's about an hour's drive or thereabouts south of San Francisco, maybe a little longer than that. But the point is that there was a mass shooting there this morning, and you just heard some of the audio from the CBSN broadcast that talked about this shooting. And we have mass shootings here all the time in the United States. When I say here, I mean in the United States of America. Every day we have mass shootings. And a mass shooting is typically described as a shooting that injures or takes the lives of at least 3 people. And we have those constantly here. We're the only country on earth where we have mass shootings on a daily basis. On a daily basis. You know, Canada, which has many more times the amount of guns the United States has, does not have this kind of mass shooting. And one of the reasons why it doesn't is because its gun laws are very different from the gun laws we have here. And the problem is that there is the gun lobby that's extremely powerful, the politicians that need their money, the Republican politicians, and a very indifferent group of politicians who rely on that money to stay in power and therefore put that money and their power ahead of your life and your safety. And so we have organizations like Moms Demand Action, and all of these other pro-gun safety and pro-gun sense organizations that work extremely hard around the clock to put in to legislators around the country safety provisions on guns and promote responsible gun ownership and gun use. This mass shooting in San Jose, we don't yet know, at least as of this recording, how many people have been killed, but a Santa Clara County Sheriff's spokesperson says that multiple people were killed and wounded at a VTA light rail facility. Now, the VTA is a transit agency that runs light rail trains in in Santa Clara County, in the corridor there down in San Jose and around that area. I've been on the light rail there before. It's a nice, smooth ride. But there is a light rail facility for the VTA in San Jose where this mass shooting took place. The shooter is dead. No word on whether or not that person took their own life or not, one way or the other. But the point is the shooter is dead, and there are, unfortunately, multiple other people dead as well. So we just don't know how many. We're going to find that out, I'm sure, before the day is over. So that's some sad news. And again, it comes with the fact that mass shootings happen all the time, thousands upon thousands of them every year in the United States, and on a monthly basis, dozens and dozens of them. It's horrifying. We live in a country like this. It's horrifying. And you would have thought that after Sandy Hook in 2012, December of 2012, that something would have been done about this in Congress. Well, the Republicans, they are unmoved by the faces of 6-year-olds and 5-year-olds blasted off. They aren't moved by that. That doesn't do anything to them. When they see photographs of babies with their faces shot off and their heads blown off, lying in pools of blood. Excuse my graphic descriptions, but that was what was happening at Sandy Hook, at that elementary school there in Norwalk, Connecticut. 9 years ago almost now. And what you get from some of these Republicans and some of these really bizarre people is, well, they were acting. It wasn't real. Those are actors. Those aren't dead bodies with their faces blown off and their brains blown out. Oh, it's just actors, you see. And they did a really good makeup job. Should we nominate them for Oscars? I mean, that's the disgusting, evil tact. That's kind of the mentality. I'm just recreating the mentality. And that's the way these people think. It's just grotesque and inhumane. And that's what you're dealing with. And this is part of an inhumane society and a system that's inhumane. And so therefore you have these mass shootings. And you have people not doing a whole heck of a lot about it in the Republican Party, despite the fact that there are Democrats who are doing a lot about it, who are passing bills. And passed bills in 2020 and 2021, background checks, prolonging the amount of time that background checks can be instituted on a federal level. And then you got Republicans standing there opposing all of this. We have to make this an election day issue, an election year issue, because it's a daily issue. We've got to get out there and vote. These Republicans claim they're pro-life, but it's very clear that they're not pro-life at all. It's a complete lie. They are very much pro-death. And quite frankly, that's consonant with the country itself. The United States was founded on death and murder and violence and genocide. So the Republicans are but a subset of what the actual country is. And to think, just think, that in just over a month, many people, perhaps some of you, are going to be waving a flag with stars and stripes on it. And the fact of the matter is that some of the people waving those flags have no idea what the history of the country is, whose flag they are waving. And some of those people do not even care about the history. Their burgers and their hot dogs take precedence.
Jose, I'm going back to...
Frankie Goes to Hollywood with Do You Know the Way to San Jose? Of course, it was sung by Dionne Warwick way back when as well. I do like the Frankie Goes to Hollywood version of the song as well. I wanted to play that one, actually, but I will play Dionne Warwick's an original of it. Burt Bacharach, of course, the songwriter. This is sad, this situation in San Jose, and we will no doubt learn more about it. There are mass shootings daily in neighborhoods all over this country that never get attention at all, and quite frankly, the axiom in the newsrooms across this country and beyond of if it bleeds, it leads have never been more profoundly true and sickeningly sad, because the body count is what gets the news. And if the body count is a body count of white people, it particularly gets news. There are black people being killed daily in neighborhoods all over this country by police and by each other, a small percentage of people in neighborhoods doing this, and it never gets covered. Nor do the rallies that come out against this kind of gun violence. Never gets covered. And, that's another thing. Welcome back, and thank you for sticking with me here on the Politicrat Daily Podcast. You're sticking with me, Omar Moore, and I really appreciate you doing that. A few more things to get to on this Wednesday edition. One of them is that yesterday, history was made by Kristen Clarke. Kristen Clarke, who is a civil rights attorney and who has worked in the United States Justice Department under the Obama administration, has become, and yesterday was confirmed by the United States Senate to become the Assistant Attorney General and the head of the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department in the United States. I mean, I think that's a really great thing. Kristen Clarke is a really good attorney and the right person for the job. She's absolutely the person. We just talked here a few moments ago, did I, about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act and all of these really important things. And let me tell you, Kristen Clarke from Brooklyn, New York, is going to be a difference maker. And I am glad about that, because she is exactly who we need in that position. And that was such a really good thing yesterday, amid a very somber day, a very sad day yesterday. And obviously, if you listen to yesterday's podcast episode here, you will know, you would have heard it in my voice. It was a very sad day. And one of the bright spots of a very sad day yesterday was the news about Kristen Clarke. Kristen Clarke, who has been working so tirelessly for decades on civil rights and human rights and justice, was voted in, approved, confirmed by the United States Senate yesterday, 51-48. Close vote, but approved and confirmed nonetheless. She will become and becoming the first black woman to head the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department. This is a huge story. Not that she's the first, I mean, that's a great story, but that it's Kristen Clarke who is the first. Because Kristen Clarke, and that it is Kristen Clarke. Kristen Clarke is exactly who you need in that position. And all this stalling by Republicans, all this fighting, and all these excuses to try to stop Kristen Clarke from getting to this position, and to show you the contempt and the naked hatred, because I just think this is absolutely fueled by the racism in the Republican ranks. And it's absolutely fueled by that. It's not Kristen Clarke being a black woman. It's the racism of these Republicans. It was despicable that the only Republican to join the 50 Democrats in the Senate, the only Republican to join them in voting for Kristen Clarke, who is qualified beyond all compare. You know, no one talks about qualifications when it comes to white nominees. I mean, some people do, but that's not the predominant discussion. When it's a black person nominated, that's the discussion. Oh, are they qualified? Are they not? And the thing is that these Republicans know and knew how qualified and capable Kristen Clarke was. She was endorsed by 1 million people, including the International Association of Police, Order of Police. I mean, there were so many other, not the Fraternal Order of Police. Those garbage makers, those evil people didn't want to go anywhere near Kristen Clarke. And why would I be surprised? You know, their racism is completely nakedly obvious. Kristen Clarke was given A ratings by just about anyone with any shred of credibility. And these Republicans know that Kristen Clarke is capable. They know that she's done an excellent job. She's worked in the Justice Department before, as I mentioned. She worked for President Obama and did a darn good job there. And these Republicans now are coming back, pretending as if Kristen Clarke doesn't belong anywhere near the Justice Department. And so the only Republican yesterday, after this months-long protracted battle, I mean, this was going on since February. And after this months, and she was introduced, I believe, in either late December or early January as the pick from President Biden. Well, he was then at the time President-elect Biden. I believe it was either in November, I think it was December of last year. And I did an episode where I talked about Kristen Clarke and played some of her remarks, along with Vanita Gupta. And it was last year, it was 2020, that he being Joe Biden, announced her as his pick for the Civil Rights Division. And it took until May the 25th, 2021, some 5 months. Well, I tell you, it's just, goodness gracious. I mean, finally, let me say this. The only Republican to vote for her, for Kristen Clarke, in the confirmation process yesterday, was Senator Susan Collins. The only one. Everyone else on the Republican side said, no, we're not voting for her. There's no reason not to vote for her. There's no reason not to vote for her. Eminently qualified, had experience, has lots of it, worked in the same department before. Come on. And we all know that the racist behavior is legendary in that party. Legendary. I put quotes around that word. But Tim Scott should be ashamed of himself too. And he is kowtowing to the racists. And the Republican Party is all about preserving their racist and misogynistic agenda and preserving power and corporate donors and the 1%. That's what the Republican Party are. They are a cult. They aren't even a party. They're a ragtag band. And they hate you. And they certainly hate black people overall. And Tim Scott, the senator out of South Carolina, who I talked about just a few minutes ago when I talked about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, can do two things at once. On the one hand, he can talk about, well, yes, I met with the family of George Floyd, and I'm very hopeful that the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act can get done, or we can get something done. I'm very hopeful. And on that very same day, yesterday, Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, vote against a black woman named Kristen Clarke, the civil rights attorney. He can do those two things at once. And that makes Senator Tim Scott himself a black man who famously or infamously said just a few weeks ago that there is no institutionalized racism in America. Probably the biggest self-hating black man there is in the United States. And as I say, I'm not going to call him the words that a lot of people like to call him, because those two words beginning with a U and the second word beginning with a T, that's not how I'm going to do this. But I will call him a self-hating person, because I think he is. There's got to be a degree of self-hatred and contempt that you have for yourself and for your people to be voting against Kristen Clarke, who is eminently qualified, has all the experience, and dealing with civil rights, while also saying that America is not a racist country. Give me a break. Come on, Senator Scott. While at the same time also saying, well, I get stopped many times in the country that I don't think is racist. You cannot make this up. And that's why I am not making this up. Because it is all true. Oh, yeah. You know, actually, I'm now thinking about it, I prefer Dionne Warwick's edition of this. And I should know better than to even perpetrate a complete front and fraud. Although, that's not fair. I'm being a little bit too harsh on myself there. No. You know, the Frankie Goes to Hollywood edition of the song is good, but the original is best, ain't it? Almost always. The original is the best. And Dionne Warwick, pardon me, Miss Warwick, did it best. Do you know the way to San Jose? That was what you just heard. And Dionne Warwick is getting this renewed acclaim and fame. She's always been famous, but on Twitter, on social media, she is absolutely... She's probably now become the queen of Twitter. I've long held the view that Chrissy Teigen was the queen of Twitter, because I just think that she just punctuated everything and has punctuated everything she says on Twitter with such aplomb and such command and such confidence. And she's so witty and so exacting and just smart and super sharp. And she's got a really, her perspicacity is just off the charts. She's got this really, she puts these deep insights in things, but keeps it on such a, I don't know how to describe it. But Chrissy Teigen, and then uses humor to absolutely leaven everything. It's just great. And then she stepped off Twitter because there were some very difficult things going on in her personal life, which she was very open about, by the way, but I don't wish to go into those. Those of you who do Twitter, like I do, at the Popcorn, REEL, are fully aware of this. If you follow Chrissy Teigen, you're fully aware of them. And some of the scathing attacks on her, too, which I think are just, all of the attacks on her are just completely out of bounds. There is nothing that justifies any of that. It's just disgusting. And any attacks on anyone on social media when you're dealing with all of their personal lives, it's just horrible. It's just really disgusting. So Chrissy Teigen went off of Twitter and then came back to it. And I think she uses it much more sparingly than she used to. And she came back to Twitter, I think late sometime last month, and she's great. But I think that Dionne Warwick also is is a queen. There doesn't have to be just one queen of Twitter. I think that Dionne Warwick is pretty much there, and she's earned it, for goodness sakes. I mean, her whole career and for one, from what I know, she's a great person, and you just look at some of her tweets, Dionne Warwick's tweets, and she's wonderful. She's just wonderful. Another treasure that I'm so thankful for is Dionne Warwick. We're so thankful to you, and thank you, Dionne, for being you and for being so great and being on Twitter as well, at Dionne Warwick. DIONNEWARWICK. Please follow her. And also follow Chrissy Teigen. Won't you please? Chrissy Teigen at CHRISSYTEIGEN. Chrissy Teigen. Follow them both. Two queens of Twitter. It's terrific. Terrific, terrific. I'm telling you, they are really great. Did you see the supermoon this morning? Did you see the lunar eclipse this morning? The super blood red moon, or whatever it was called? I did. I did. And look, when you are an early bird like yours truly, you will get to see all kinds of things that go bump in the night or bump in the early morning hours. You will see any and everything. Not because you want to necessarily, but because it's there for you to see. It's remarkable. And I had missed some of these things in the past, and they went on at much different and actually more convenient times of the day or night. And yet, for some good reasons, I missed them. But not this time. This was not going to happen. So I took a bunch of pictures of this supermoon, which actually was remarkable. I can't even talk. It was that remarkable, I can't even say the word remarkable. But it was incredible. It truly was. And I put see, I can't even talk. Well, you can't see me, but you can hear that I can't even talk. If you go to Twitter and go to @the_popcorn REEL, you will see just a few, 2 or 3 pictures I posted of the supermoon and the lunar eclipse, part of the total lunar eclipse that took place early this morning here in California, in San Francisco. Now, if you were in Australia, you could have seen this as well, very well. If you were in California, you could have seen this very well. The only difference between California and Australia in this regard, regarding the lunar eclipse and the supermoon, is the time difference. So you would have had to have got up pretty darn early this morning in California to have seen this. And I, as an early riser, happened to do that. And wow, I'm glad that I got to see this. And you can see the pictures I have posted on Twitter @thepopcornREEL for Wednesday, May 26th, 2021, of this super blood red moon, or the super red moon, or whatever it's called, and also a picture of the lunar eclipse taking place. And wow, it was really a sight to see in the night sky. It was so peaceful and tranquil, and you could see this incredible color of this moon. And then the eclipse. Wow. Wow, wow, and wow. Yeah. All start with W. So does Wednesday. And I'll be back in just a moment.
I was extremely tempted to go in the summer, but various people said to me, the autumn is going to be a disaster. He's in complete let it rip mode. Just open everything up. Keep the beaches open. You've got to stay and try and control the shopping trolley. Otherwise, God knows what's going to happen. And I think part of the problem was people thought that, like in 2019, a lot of people thought, like in 2019, I had a lot of influence over the Prime Minister and a lot of things he would do what I said. And whilst that had been the case in 2019, from 10 o'clock on election night, as soon as he had an 80-seat majority, that situation changed almost immediately. As I said, I think I definitely should have gone in September, without any shadow of a doubt in my mind now. The reason why I didn't was because it was clear that we were heading for another disaster and there was going to be another whole set of meetings. And I thought, well, maybe I'll be able to force this through. It's better not to get into the business of publishing people's private messages and WhatsApps, and I don't want to embarrass and make, some of these people are in position now, and publishing WhatsApps with the Cabinet Secretary and people like that is a very big step. What I think should happen, I think far better than me randomly throwing WhatsApps out on the internet, is that you, the MPs, should force the government. MPs have the power to force the government to face this reality and to discuss the things which I've discussed today. You have the power to do that, and what should happen is that the MPs force this situation. People like, the former Cabinet Secretary and others should be here in the seat like me, under oath, explaining what happened, and like me, saying what we think we got right and what we think we got wrong.
Finally, the Tories again, and much has been made and said about the Labour Party and anti-Semitism in its ranks, and there's no question that when Jeremy Corbyn was the Labour Party leader, he turned a blind eye and a deaf ear to some, if not all, I'd say some, of the anti-Semitism in the party. That's probably putting it kindly, and he himself, at the very least, is someone who has said things or waved away things or trivialized anti-Semitism, and it cost him the whip. Sir Keir Starmer removed the whip from Jeremy Corbyn just last year, and it has not been restored since. He is not a voting member of the Labour Party in Parliament anymore. He is still technically in the Labour Party, but he's just not a voting member, so his vote would go down as an independent vote. And right now, as far as I know, he has still had the whip withdrawn from him. And there's been a lot of focus on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. But what has not been focused on, and there should be, but what is not being focused on at all is racism and Islamophobia in the Conservative Party. And I've talked about it a bit. There has to be much more focus on it. And what I want to do for the next few minutes is talk about, or at least play to you audio of a report done by Sky News yesterday, Tuesday, May 25th, 2021, about a report that found Islamophobia and racism in Boris Johnson's Conservative Party and with Boris Johnson himself. So listen up for the next 8 or 9 minutes.
An independent review has found that Boris Johnson's comments about women wearing the burqa have given an impression that the Conservative Party is insensitive to Muslims. The former Equality and Human Rights Commissioner, Professor Swaran Singh, analysed hundreds of complaints and found that anti-Muslim sentiment remains a problem within the Conservative Party. Labour has described the report as a damning indictment of rife discrimination.
You still think that the Conservative Party is institutionally racist despite the findings in this report, or despite the conclusion, rather, of this report?
I think the findings of this report show clearly that the Conservative Party is institutionally racist, and that's based upon the definition of what is institutional racism. The Macpherson inquiry was very clear. It defines institutional racism as, and I'll quote this, the collective failure of an organisation detected in processes, attitudes and behaviour. And each of those processes, attitudes and behaviour in this particular case and in the findings of this report are found. I mean, the report highlights that the party's processes have failed and need an overall haul, from policy to strategy to implementation to data collection. There is a root and branch overhaul being done because the process has failed. From attitudes, we're hearing as part of this report that people are still giving evidence anonymously. They don't feel confident to add their name to the evidence of racism that they're giving. And those that do give evidence, complainants, are seen as troublemakers. Behaviour, the report concludes that from the top, from the Prime Minister at one level, to local associations at the bottom, there is an attitude issue and a problem and a behaviour issue in terms of Islamophobia. So on each of those counts, it satisfies the definition of institutional racism. And Beth, you know, the way I see it, if it looks like institutional racism, feels like institutional racism, fits the definition of institutional racism, then I'm afraid it is institutional racism.
Is Boris Johnson part of the problem here?
I think Boris accepts that he is part of the problem and that he got it wrong in the past. And as he says himself, that words that he used and thought he could get away with a journalist are not the words that would suit a prime minister. And by that, what he's admitting is that his words are not prime ministerial. They are not acceptable, that they are insensitive towards Muslim communities. And I welcome the fact that there is now an acknowledgement that those words, whether they were used by Zach Goldsmith or Bob Blackman or Boris Johnson, were insensitive and unacceptable. And I think it's right that the party has apologised for those. But I also think that there is still further to go, and that even with this report, with some of its positive findings and some of its positive recommendations, still falls short. Because by concluding what is so obvious, that the party does have an institutional racism issue, by concluding that it does not, it clearly shows that there are flaws in the way in which this inquiry was conducted, flaws that I've already pointed out, and it requires the Equalities and Human Rights Commission to look at that.
Just on what the Prime Minister said, though, he has apologised when we go back to calling Muslim women wearing veils bank robbers or letterboxes. He has apologised for the offence he caused regarding those remarks. He hasn't actually apologised for making the remarks. And in the report, they say, we gave him an opportunity to apologise and offered the Prime Minister an opportunity to apologise for his past remarks. He said the following, and that he did not wish to add anything further. And then he says, I apologise for I'm obviously sorry for any offence taken. That's a bit of a non-apology, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, he apologises for the offence he caused, which means he accepts that the words were offensive, and he accepts that they are not words that would suit a prime minister, and they are not words that he would use now. So I think you can conclude from all of that it is a mealy-mouthed apology. And, you know, Boris is not known to apologise. But as far as I'm concerned, there is an acceptance that what he said was wrong, what he said was offensive, what he said was insensitive, and that he would not use those words again. And I think as far as I'm concerned, we can move on from that.
Well, that was our political editor, Beth Rigby, speaking to the former Conservative Party chair, Baroness Fawzi, there. The current Conservative Party chair, Amanda Milling, spoke to me a little earlier, in particular about the comments made by Boris Johnson, criticised in the report.
The Prime Minister was the one who commissioned this independent investigation because, you know, like myself, we need to ensure that there's no discrimination in our party. But the Prime Minister has been clear that, you know, in the interview which he did with Professor Singh, to say that, you know, he was sorry if he had caused any offence to anyone through his comments.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has warned of a powerful response if Hamas breaks the ceasefire, which ended this month's conflict. Mr. Netanyahu was speaking after meeting the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Jerusalem earlier today.
We too will give meaning to our commitment to our self-defense. If Hamas breaks the calm and attacks Israel, our response will be very powerful. And we have discussed ways of how to work together to prevent Hamas rearmament with the weapons and means of aggression.
Well, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has also held a meeting with the US Secretary of State to discuss US aid in rebuilding Gaza.
I informed President Abbas and earlier Prime Minister Netanyahu that the United States will notify Congress of our intention to provide $75 million in additional development and economic assistance for the Palestinians in 2021. We'll also provide $5.5 million in immediate disaster assistance for Gaza and a little over $32 million for UNRWA's emergency humanitarian appeal.
This is the News Hour. Coming up, Gareth Southgate names his 33-man provisional England squad for the European Championships.
So there you have it. I mean, Baroness Vazi, as you heard there, was talking about this, about the racism and the anti-Muslim fervor in her party, in her Conservative Party. She was once the Conservative Party chair. And this report that came out yesterday, an independent report by Professor Singh, forget his first name, that found that Boris Johnson and the Conservative Party have anti-Islamic root. I mean, it has a sentiment that is racist and anti-Islamic and Islamophobic. And that is no surprise to yours truly. And I dare say that it is no surprise to a great many people who know about the Conservative Party in England. Boris Johnson was once a journalist, and he made racist statements all the time, both in his news columns that he would write in newspapers and before microphones. He claims that he will never use that language now, but we all know that he uses all kinds of language that's offensive. Right here and right now, as Prime Minister. Oh, I'd never use those terms as Prime Minister. Oh, please. I mean, there's got to be at least one or two flies on the wall in number 10 Downing Street. And the whole thing about him claiming that he didn't say, I'd rather the bodies be stacked high than to order another national lockdown. Oh, please. Everybody knows he said that. Come on. And everybody knows that Boris Johnson is a pathological liar. Oh, and even you heard the former Conservative Party chair even saying, Baroness Vazi, saying, oh, well, Boris is not Boris. Jeez. Boris Johnson is not one to apologize. And so what if he's not one to apologize? He has to be held accountable, whether he apologizes or whether he doesn't. And this report, to me, while a good report, should have gone a whole lot further than it does. And this is an independent report. And if an independent report won't go far enough, what does it take? Apart from voters actually voting the Member of Parliament for Ruislip and Uxbridge out of office? Because if you vote him out of his seat at Uxbridge and Ruislip, there's no way he can be Prime Minister anymore. If he's not a Member of Parliament, he's not Prime Minister anymore. But the people in Ruislip and Uxbridge, they're not going to do that. They're not going to vote him out. So the only other way to get Boris Johnson out of the premiership is at the next general election and at the by-elections leading to it. You have to start voting for Labour or voting for parties that dilute the Conservative majority. so that he doesn't have an operating majority anymore. And even coalition governments won't be in the offing. The DUP's status is deeply fractured with the Conservatives. And Arlene Foster has left that post. She was the head of the DUP. Now it's some guy named I don't know what. But the DUP's relationship with the Conservatives and vice versa has been totally destroyed by Boris Johnson's lies, by Brexit and how Brexit left Northern Ireland high and dry, and there won't be a border in the Irish Sea, and of course that was a complete bunch of bunk. And the failure of Brexit is now not being talked about by the news media in England. The corporate news media there have completely turned a blind eye and a deaf ear. And this report yesterday got, despite that 9 minutes that you just heard, got scant treatment. And it just kind of got glossed over. And everybody now is eating their third donut of the day. And they were too busy enjoying that third donut of the day and all its tasty lack of nutrients to realize or even care that this report came out and absolutely pilloried Boris Johnson, but did not go much further than that. And all of the time the media focuses on the Labour Party, and they do not focus nearly enough on the rank racism in the Conservative Party. It's long been a bastion of racism. Long. Racists in that party openly. How many times have I pointed out members of parliament who've said openly racist things? Including that MP that said N in the woodpile during a meeting of constituents a few years ago. And she just got a basic wrist slap. And then another member of parliament or thereabouts, a conservative, who said racist things about Asians. Or another person who is in parliament who said things about black and brown people. Absolutely racist. Absolutely. And they're getting no one's expelling them from the party. No one's removing the whip from them. Scandalous. I'm not saying that Jeremy Corbyn shouldn't have had the whip removed. I actually believe he should have. And there are lots of people who would disagree with me. And I think it was the right thing that Sir Keir Starmer did. I don't think Sir Keir Starmer has got much right since then. Because I think that he is absolutely playing himself into a corner. The moderate corner. Because he is a moderate, essentially. But he's actually backing himself firmly in that corner. And alienating voters. And that whole party needs a reshake. I mean, instead of giving Angela Rayner short shrift, and although he did reappoint her to these 3 or 4 other positions of great prominence, the party itself has to be completely excavated and put back into the working class roots that it has long enjoyed up until maybe the last 10, 12 years. Maybe 20 years if you talk about Tony Blair in 1997. It's 20 years plus. 25 almost. But the media does not focus on the Conservative Party and its blatant racism. And this goes back decades. Enoch Powell in the 60s at the House of Commons, the rivers of blood speech, the River Tiber, and this guy's openly racist. Enoch Powell from Wolverhampton, the MP from Wolverhampton, blatantly racist. And, again, the media just doesn't focus on the Conservatives because it's in the pockets of them. They genuflect to the Conservatives. They are the Tories. And one thing that is true about the media is that it loves to attack Labour. And sometimes the attacks are justified, but most of them are not. It's just incomprehensible that you wouldn't talk about the racism in the Conservative Party or the Islamophobia in that party. It's absolutely inexcusable. So much going on. And I've only just scratched the surface. Thank you very much for listening to this edition of The Politicrat. I'm Omar Moore.
I can confirm with you at this point that there are 8 victims that are pronounced deceased at this point. And there's 1 suspect that's pronounced deceased. This is still ongoing, like I said. The numbers can change, okay? So this is still a fluid and active, ongoing investigation. We have all the resources out here from city, county, and federal agencies out here, including the FBI and the DA and Homeland Security out here to assist with this investigation. So again, we have a lot of resources out here. Ourselves, we're trying to figure out what exactly happened, what's going on. But we received information that there are explosive devices that are located inside the building. That being said, we activated our bomb squad, which is currently out on scene and trying to determine, pretty much we're trying to clear out every room and every crevice of that building to ensure that the public safety is rest assured if we open up that building later on in the near future. So that being said, getting the information out to all of you is going to be a little bit fluid and dynamic. It's going to take some time for us just to go in there and render the area safe so we can have investigators go in on scene to determine, collect evidence, and then gather all the information that we can at this point.
We have a name. Law enforcement officials have told CBS News the shooter is 57-year-old Samuel Cassidy, the alleged shooter. Do we have any further information about this individual? Was he a member of the union? Was he meant to be at that meeting this morning?
I don't know if he was a member of the union. Some of the indications that we're getting is that he may have been a supervisor, so I'm not sure if he would still have union status at that point. But these are all some of the loose details that we're trying to find out more about this shooter. We do know that he was apparently very well armed, and he arrived here with those arms to carry out this basically a massacre of fellow employees at the VTA rail yard.